Have you ever imagined, like, what you would do if someone you loved just disappeared?
Oh, wow.
No warning, no explanation, just gone.
It's terrifying to think about.
Yeah, and that's the nightmare that the Robinson family in Archer, Florida has been living with for the past 4 years.
It's a tragic situation.
Yeah. So today we're going to do a deep dive into the case of Jasmine Robinson.
Go.
She was a 23-year-old who disappeared in February of 2019. And to make things even more unsettling, she was 6 months pregnant at the time.
6 months pregnant.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with two potential victims here.
Exactly. And what makes this case so intriguing is that Archer is a small town, like the kind of place where everyone knows each other.
Right. You would think in a close-knit community like that someone would have seen something or come forward with information.
Right, you would think so.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like Jasmine vanished without a trace. And we're going to try to make sense of it all by piecing together the information from all the sources you've provided.
Okay. Sounds like a challenge, but I'm up for it.
All right, so it's like a puzzle, but with some pieces missing.
I see. So we're going to have to fill in the gaps as we go.
Exactly.
All right. I'm ready when you are.
Okay, great. So there are these mysterious phone calls, a complicated relationship with the father of her child, and a web of small-town secrets that could be concealing the truth.
This is already sounding like a movie plot.
I know, right? It's a
Yeah.
very compelling case.
Yeah.
So let's start by getting a sense of the place.
Yeah, okay.
The sources describe Archer, Florida as this, like, really tight-knit community.
Right. Like everybody knows everybody's business.
Right. So what does that tell us about the investigation?
Well, it adds a layer of complexity for sure.
How so?
Well, in a small town, people are often reluctant to come forward with information.
Especially if it involves someone they know.
Yeah, exactly. Loyalty and fear of repercussions can create this wall of silence. It's really hard to break through.
That makes sense. Now let's talk about Jasmine herself.
Okay.
What kind of person was she?
From what I've gathered, she was a young woman who was close to her family, especially her sister, Shantavia.
Okay.
She loved basketball, worked hard at her job at McDonald's.
And she was really excited about becoming a mother.
It's just heartbreaking to think about what happened.
It really is.
Now, the sources also mentioned that she had a court date coming up for a theft charge.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, do we know anything more about that?
I don't have any details on that, but her family insists it's irrelevant to her disappearance.
Okay, so they don't think it played a role in what happened.
No, they believe something else is at play here, something much bigger.
All right, well, let's rewind to that night.
Okay.
It was Sunday, February 17th, 2019.
Sunday, February 17th. Got it.
What do we know about her last known movements?
Well, she worked her usual shift at McDonald's, and then her grandmother, Miss Rosa, picked her up.
Okay.
And according to Miss Rosa, Jasmine received some really upsetting phone calls at work that day.
Interesting. Did she say what they were about?
No, she wouldn't go into any detail, which is kind of suspicious, don't you think?
Definitely a red flag. It sounds like something was weighing on her mind.
For sure.
So after work, she went home with her grandmother. What happened next? Well, later that evening, after they'd gone to their rooms, Jasmine just vanished.
Wait, so she just disappeared from her own home?
That's right. No sign of forced entry, no struggle, just an empty room the next morning.
Oh, that's incredibly eerie. No car, no goodbye, just gone.
Exactly. It adds to the mystery for sure.
So what happened next? Did anyone report her missing?
Well, Miss Rosa immediately contacted Jasmine's sister, Shantavia.
Okay.
And then a few days later, Shantavia filed a missing person report with the Alachua County Sheriff's Office.
And that's when Detective Chris Whitell enters the picture.
You got it. He's been the lead investigator on this case ever since, trying to piece together what happened.
Okay, so what were his first steps?
Well, one of the first things he did was try to track her cell phone activity.
Makes sense. Did that lead anywhere?
It did, but it also created more questions than answers.
Oh, how so?
Well, the phone pinged in some rural areas in neighboring counties.
Okay.
But those areas have limited surveillance footage, so it's hard to say exactly where she was or who she might have been with.
So we have these mysterious phone calls, a disappearance from her own home, and a cell phone trail that goes cold in the middle of nowhere.
It's like something out of a crime novel.
I know, right? And we haven't even gotten to the most complicated part yet.
Oh, right. What's that?
Her pregnancy.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because remember Jasmine was a lesbian.
Right, so who was the father?
That's the question that quickly became central to the investigation.
And did they figure it out?
The sources identify him as Christopher Wiggins.
Christopher Wiggins.
Yeah, apparently Jasmine knew him from around town.
Okay, and what's his story?
Well, here's where things take a bit of a darker turn.
Okay.
Wiggins is a 9-time convicted felon with a history of violence.
A 9-time convicted felon.
Yeah, and to make matters even worse, just days after Jasmine's disappearance, he was arrested for an armed robbery.
Hold on, so the alleged father of her child is a career criminal who gets arrested for another crime just days after she vanishes.
It definitely raises some eyebrows.
That can't be a coincidence.
It's a significant detail for sure, and while Wiggins is currently serving an 11-year sentence for that robbery,
Okay.
he's refused to answer any questions about Jasmine's disappearance.
Wow, this is getting more and more suspicious.
It is. There's more, though. According to Jasmine's sister, Shantavia Wiggins was married and didn't want her to have the baby.
He didn't want her to have the baby even though it was his child.
Yeah, allegedly he pressured her to get an abortion and even offered to pay for it.
But she refused.
She did. Shantavia said her sister was determined to keep the baby and was excited about becoming a mother.
So we have this conflict brewing between them. Did it escalate?
It seems so. Detective Wittell found these heated exchanges between Jasmine and Wiggins on Facebook in the days leading up to her disappearance.
Facebook messages.
Yep, and get this, at one point Jasmine actually revealed the pregnancy to Wiggins' wife.
Wow. Talk about adding fuel to the fire. What was his reaction?
We don't know for sure, but shortly after that, Jasmine started receiving those mysterious and upsetting phone calls at work.
Interesting. So it sounds like someone was trying to intimidate her. Could it have been Wiggins or someone connected to him?
That's one of the theories Detective Whitehall is exploring. He believes that someone in Archer knows what happened to Jasmine, but they're afraid to come forward.
Do we know why they would be afraid? Is there something more to this story than just a small town trying to protect its own?
That's what we need to uncover. Remember, this is a town where secrets run deep.
So where do we go from here? We've got a missing pregnant woman, a potentially dangerous alleged father, and a community that seems to be holding its breath. What are the possible scenarios?
That's what we'll delve into next. We'll examine the different theories, analyze the evidence, and see if we can shed some light on what truly happened to Jasmine Robinson. So let's start by looking at the possibility that maybe Jasmine decided to run away.
Run away.
Yeah, and start a new life. Maybe she felt overwhelmed by, the situation with Wiggins, the upcoming court date.
Right.
And just the whole prospect of raising a child alone.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we have to consider all angles.
We do.
But wouldn't her family have some idea if that was her intention?
Well, that's the thing. They insist that Jasmine was really excited about becoming a mother and that she wouldn't have just abandoned her family and her support system.
Okay, but people do things that you wouldn't expect sometimes.
That's true, but there's also no evidence to suggest that she ran away. There hasn't been any activity on her social media or her bank accounts or even her cell phone since she disappeared.
So it's like she just vanished into thin air.
Exactly.
Which makes the runaway theory a little less likely.
Yeah, a little less likely.
So if she didn't leave on her own, could she have been forced or coerced by someone?
That's another theory we need to consider, especially given the conflict with Wiggins.
Right.
And his, alleged desire for Jasmine to have an abortion.
Right.
It's definitely possible that he or someone connected to him was involved in her disappearance.
Especially considering his history of violence.
Exactly. He had 9 prior convictions.
Yeah, you mentioned that. What were they for?
It's a pretty chilling rap sheet assault battery, even armed robbery. This is not a man who shies away from confrontation or using force to get what he wants.
And remember those upsetting phone calls that Jasmine received at work?
Oh, yeah.
Those could have been threats or attempts to pressure her into doing what he wanted.
The timing is definitely suspicious, and we know that Wiggins was in Archer the night Jasmine disappeared.
So he had the opportunity.
He did.
But you also mentioned that he was arrested for armed robbery just a few days later.
Right.
Wouldn't that make it difficult for him to have been involved in her disappearance?
Well, it depends on the circumstances.
Okay.
He could have had accomplices, or it's possible he was trying to create an alibi. We really can't rule anything out at this point.
And it's also worth noting that even though Wiggins is in prison, he hasn't been charged with anything related to Jasmine's disappearance.
That's true. Detective Whitehall has interviewed him multiple times, but Wiggins has refused to answer any questions about the case.
So we have this wall of silence from Wiggins. And then you mentioned earlier that the community itself might be reluctant to come forward.
Right.
It seems like Detective Vitale is facing some major obstacles in this investigation.
He is, but it's understandable that people in a close-knit community would hesitate to speak out.
Especially if they're afraid of what might happen if they do.
Exactly. They could fear retaliation from Wiggins or his associates, or maybe they just want to avoid getting involved in something that could, potentially tear their community apart.
But that silence allows the truth to remain hidden.
Exactly. And it's heartbreaking to think that someone out there might have information that could help solve this case, but they're just too afraid to come forward.
Yeah, and all this time, Jasmine's family is left wondering what happened to her.
It's a terrible burden to carry. They deserve answers.
And we can't forget about Jasmine's unborn child, Jamelia.
Right, she was just months away from being born.
This is a double tragedy. A young woman and her unborn child vanish without a trace. It's hard to even fathom the pain that her family must be going through.
It really is. They had already started preparing for the baby's arrival, getting the nursery ready, picking out names.
Right.
And then imagine that excitement turning to unimaginable grief when Jasmine disappeared.
Yeah, it's just devastating. Have they shared anything about what this experience has been like for them?
There are some really heartbreaking statements from Jasmine's grandmother, Miss Rosa, and her sister, Shantavia.
What do they say?
Well, Miss Rosa, who raised Jasmine, speaks about her unwavering faith and how she prays every day for their safe return. It's clear she's holding on to hope with everything she has.
And Shantavia.
Shantavia talks about the agony of not knowing, the constant wondering, the feeling of being stuck in a nightmare.
I can't imagine.
She says she wants to believe that her sister is still alive, but, the reality of the situation is just weighing so heavily on her.
And 4 years is a long time to live with that kind of uncertainty.
It is. It must feel like their lives are on hold.
It really must.
But it's a testament to their strength and their love for Jasmine that they haven't given up hope.
So they're still actively searching for her.
Oh, yeah. They're doing everything they can to bring her home.
That's amazing.
They continue to plead for anyone with information to come forward, and they work tirelessly to keep Jasmine's case in the public eye, organizing vigils, giving interviews, anything to keep her story alive.
It sounds like they're truly incredible people.
They are.
So what about Detective Whitell? Is he still actively investigating the case?
Absolutely. He hasn't given up. He believes that someone out there knows what happened to Jasmine and Jamelia, and he won't rest until he finds those answers.
Is there anything else being done to try and break through that wall of silence?
Well, there's a $10,000 reward being offered for information leading to the arrest of those responsible for Jasmine's disappearance.
Okay.
It's not a huge amount, but sometimes even a small incentive can make a difference.
Yeah, it's a long shot.
Yeah.
But at this point, any glimmer of hope is welcome.
It's important to remember that even in cold cases, new information can come to light years later.
Oh, definitely.
Someone might have a change of heart or a guilty conscience, or they might remember something they previously thought was insignificant and decide to come forward.
So there's still a chance that justice can be served even after all this time.
There is, and that's what keeps Jasmine's family going. That belief that one day they'll finally know what happened to her and that those responsible will be held accountable.
This deep dive has been a real roller coaster of emotions.
It has.
We've gone from this idyllic setting of a small town to the dark reality of a missing persons case, exploring, complex family dynamics and the chilling possibility of violence.
It's a reminder that even in the most seemingly peaceful places, darkness can lurk beneath the surface.
And it highlights the importance of never giving up hope, both for the families who are searching for their loved ones and for the investigators who are dedicated to uncovering the truth.
Exactly. We may never know for sure what happened to Jasmine Robinson and her unborn child. But the search for answers continues, and as we've seen, every piece of information, every lead, every voice that speaks up can bring us closer to understanding this tragic mystery.
It really makes you think,
It does.
We've covered so much ground in this case, from the initial disappearance to the, complexities of the investigation and the devastating impact this has all had on Jasmine's family.
It's a case that really sticks with you.
Yeah.
It makes you question everything you think you know about your own community, about human nature, about the lengths that people will go to protect themselves or the people they care about.
It's true. And as we start to wrap up this deep dive, I keep coming back to those phone calls that Jasmine received at work.
Yeah, those are definitely a key piece of the puzzle.
They seem so crucial to me.
They do.
Do we have any more information about them, like any details about what was said or who the caller might have been?
Unfortunately, not much. We know they upset her, but the content of those calls remains a mystery. Detective Whitell has tried to track down the caller, but so far those efforts haven't really led anywhere.
It's frustrating, isn't it? Those calls could hold such vital clues, but they're just shrouded in secrecy.
It's true, and it just makes you wonder, what if we knew what was said in those calls?
Right.
Would it change everything?
That's possible, right?
It's possible the caller was trying to intimidate Jasmine. Maybe silence her about the pregnancy or force her to leave town.
Or maybe they knew something about her disappearance and were trying to warn her or even lure her into a trap.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah, it is. We've explored the theories, we've analyzed the evidence, we've heard the heartbreaking claims from Jasmine's family.
We have.
But ultimately, we're left with more questions than answers.
That's the nature of cold cases sometimes. Despite our best efforts, the truth just remains out of reach.
So that doesn't mean we stop searching for it.
Never.
So what happens now? What's next for Detective Whitell and for Jasmine's family?
Well, Detective Whittle has said he won't give up on this case. He's still actively investigating, and he's urging anyone with information to come forward, no matter how small or insignificant they think it might be.
And Jasmine's family, what about them? They must feel so lost and helpless, caught in this limbo of not knowing.
They are, but they're also incredibly strong.
Okay.
They continue to raise awareness about Jasmine's case. They organize searches. They advocate for justice.
That's incredible.
They're determined to keep her memory alive and to hold on to hope that one day they'll have answers.
It's a testament to the power of love and the strength of the human spirit.
It really is, and it's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can endure.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener.
It has.
It shed light on the complexities of a missing person case, the devastating impact it has on those left behind, and the importance of seeking justice no matter how long it takes.
And I think if there's one thing we can all take away from this, it's the power of awareness. By sharing Jasmine's story, by keeping her case in the public eye, we all contribute to the ongoing search for answers.
And maybe, just maybe, someone out there will hear this and feel compelled to come forward with information that could finally break this case wide open.
That's what we're hoping for, that someone will find the courage to speak up and help bring closure to this family that's been suffering for far too long.
If you have any information about the disappearance of Jasmine Robinson, please contact the Alachua County Sheriff's Office.
Right.
Every detail, every memory, every hunch could be a piece of the puzzle that helps solve this mystery.
And even if you want to remain anonymous, you can always call Crime Stoppers.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the disappearance of Jasmine Robinson.
It's been a pleasure.
It's a case that reminds us that the truth is out there waiting to be uncovered, and that even the smallest voice can sometimes make the biggest difference.